My brother played a cruel prank on my autistic girlfriend, and she clawed his face off. So he tried to get the whole family to disown me. I stood silently looking at my brother Ian, who was bleeding profusely and begging me to break up with Lola because of what she did to him. At the same time, all of Lola's friends were screaming about how Ian should know to leave a sleeping girl alone and how his actions were creepy. I still had no idea what had fully happened, however, so I wasn't about to pick sides without knowing anything. Ian ended up calling our mom to tell him that Lola hurt him, and Lola's friends walked out with her, despite my protests. I remember standing there an hour later, my mother calling me for the 10th time, and Lola finally texting me that she needs space to think. She lightly texted, and she expressed that she can't shake her fear of what happened, but she still hadn't told me from her side what actually happened. Ian and my mom tried to convince me to break up with her, and chastised me for not helping or standing up for my brother when he was being assaulted. They also demanded an apology for not playing my part as an older brother. Ian even FaceTimed a few other family members, and my aunt took a 3-hour drive up to make sure everything was okay. On one hand, I knew family is family, and I should do what I can to stand up for the people who helped raise me and become the person I am. On the other hand, Lola is my girlfriend. I adore her. I love her. I feel like I should be there to protect her. I sat and thought about whose side to take for a while, but one of her friends from the party just texted me to chew me out for choking up at the party instead of standing up for Lola. A lot of choice words were said, but the thing that stuck out to me was her calling my brother insensitive for not only disturbing her, but using a phobia against her. That's when it clicked for me that he had a spider mask. Lola has severe arachnophobia. Speaking of Lola, she called to ask if I was okay and if we could talk in person the next day. I wanted nothing more than to keep talking to her. I apologized over and over, but she thanked me for apologizing and kept changing the subject to where I wanted to meet her. Tomorrow we decided on this nice crepe and tea place. She likes one of our first date spots, and then she hung up at the exact same time. My aunt had arrived at my mom's, and I knew that sooner rather than later I was going to have to talk to them too. I knew that it's very likely they were going to berate me, try get me to apologize to Ian and sway my decision, but I was going to hold my ground and try to be as objective as possible. Either way, I planned to meet up with Lola first. Well, unfortunately, that plan of mine went out the window because I stared at him. His eyes were bulging. He looked as panicked as the other night when he was trying to get away from Lola. One of the officers asked if everything was all right, and like clockwork, Ian started bawling his eyes out. My mom asked him what was wrong. I told her she had to stop babying him, and my aunt asked him again if he had anything to report. You were up in arms against this girl this morning. Where'd all that fire go? Did she hit you or not? It took a while of us pushing him, but he finally admitted to the room that he didn't have anything to report because he didn't feel like she'd be rightly prosecuted. His next story sounded closer to the one I knew, where he admitted to knowing Lola had gone to sleep and wanted to scare her so she'd wake up, that he put on a mask to really get her good, and that there was no one else in the room with them. He couldn't get any of our friends to agree to the prank, so he did it himself. He said he started making creepy sounds from all around the room and then got close to scream in her face. He said she woke up and surprised him because he thought the stress and panic would cause her to scream or hide, but she went for his face instead. He described his beating to everyone in the room, some of which I saw had the officers look at each other, then back at him. Then that's when I pushed the door in, and the rest of his story is what I was there for. I'm sure if the police weren't there, I would have hit him. I know I would have. My mom started crying even more when he said she was sleeping, a fact that changed his entire story, and my aunt chewed him out, everyone scolding him for his stupidity and asshole behavior, while the officers explained that it sounded like if what he said was true, Lola acted in self-defense, and that not only was what he did juvenile, but one of the officers wanted to question him more as his behavior was concerning. One of the officers sat down with him and asked him to talk through his thought process, and the other officer explained to my mom and aunt that Lola could press charges, given Ian's story. My aunt still looked pissed while my mom cried about being confused. My mom literally looked at me and said she didn't understand how her baby could do this. My mom kept fussing with my aunt and another uncle on the phone, crying over the drama while I texted a friend of mine who lives across the city if I could stay with him. Minutes later, my aunt asked me if I'd spoken to Lola about this, and I told her I haven't yet, but I had plans to. Later on, she told me she was sorry for believing my brother without listening to any other account, and that she hopes Lola is okay. So then it was just me in the apartment. The cops left after taking a statement from my brother and I. My mom left with my brother still crying, my brother calling me an asshole, the world's worst brother, and my aunt gave me a hug, apologizing again for how she and her sister acted and told me that I don't owe her anything but that she'd like to know that Lola is okay. Speaking of Lola, I met up with her that same day. As excited as I was to see her, I'd been preparing for her to break up with me, whether I ended up single or not. I wanted to make sure she was okay. Above all, she brought a friend with her, and we all sat and talked. We talked for a while about everything, and her version of the story fully matched the version Ian gave the cops even further, proving that she was in the right here, and my brother acted like a complete and unreasonable asshole towards her. I consoled her and told her that had I known the full version of the events, there would have been no hesitation on my end, and I would have stuck up for her immediately. I tried to explain that ultimately, the only reason I didn't take any action was because the two people closest to me had just gotten into a huge altercation, and I had absolutely no context to go off. She actually seemed to accept this and forgive me for my actions, something that definitely surprised me. She went on to tell me that she was doing okay and definitely healing. And surprisingly, the event wasn't very traumatic for her. That made me extremely happy to hear because, as I said, the only thing I truly wanted is for her to get better and to be safe. For a moment, I actually thought we might stay together. However, she said she couldn't simply overlook that her boyfriend, the man who swore to always protect her, stood there and did nothing in such a hectic situation. In short, she did break up with me, and when I told her about the police telling us that she could press charges, her friend laughed and told me that they were more than aware. I left the meeting with a sense of resolution. However, my problems didn't end as my mom kept calling and texting me nonstop, telling me that this whole ordeal has made Ian and her a wreck, and she can't believe I'd let a girl do this to us. I blocked my brother right after he left my apartment and blocked her a few days after too. Ever since that happened, my brother has made a total of 5 fake accounts across different social media platforms to try talk to me, and has even called from numerous different phone numbers. His texts and voice notes range from him being sorry to him being angry, to my mom chiming in and telling me my actions are breaking the family apart, things of that nature. Either way, I'm blocking anything that comes from him. I've no interest in forgiving them for the time being, and I'll have to do a lot of reflection to see if I want to have a relationship with them again.